Welcome, welcome, welcome to the new school, and congratulations from all of us on your offer of admission to the College of Performing Arts. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you for the time and the energy you've spent to get yourself here today. I'm sorry it's a little toasty. We're working on it. I want to welcome you because you in this room, you are members of an elite class of artists. You are special. You are musicians. You are creative thinkers. You are people who are ready to help us build the art that we're going to see tomorrow. And that's what we're so excited about. And that's what really brought you, I think, to the new school. I want to talk to you a little bit about how we see artists for the future. And the first thing I want to do is play you another video. Are you ready for that? All right. Just a moment.
2, 3, 4.
At the New School, we think a lot about this particular question, the question of what does it mean to be an artist in the 21st century?
Performing artists in the 21st century are going to have deep technique training. They're going to have to be fearless as artists and as individuals, but that's really just the beginning. We also need artists who are going to be flexible, nimble, and to be able to apply that technique and that artistry across a range of opportunities.
Artists need to be entrepreneurs. They need to grow their own franchise. They need to have craft and their own voice. They need to see themselves as citizen artists who can make a positive difference in the world. And they have to be ready, most importantly, to surrender to all the opportunities that are going to be put in front of them.
A new community of artists working in brand new spaces that are intentionally designed for collaborative work. So students from drama, actors, writers, and directors are working with musicians at Manus, composers at Jazz. They're working with students from Parsons Design and Technology. These young artists are going to be defining the future of their art form.
A great example where students from the School of Drama, from Manus, and from the School of Jazz are working together every semester is a course called the Improvisation Artists Lab that's taught by Jane Ira Bloom and Joe Grafazzi. And over the course of those 15 weeks, the drama students are singing, the jazz students are acting, they're all interacting in different ways to create very moving work.
Our production of Happy End was an opportunity for students to learn from each other, where musicians and vocalists are learning from actors, actors are learning from singers, musicians are on stage performing, and this is really indicative of what we see as the future for the College of Performing Arts.
What happens when you bring Parsons to the table? One of the great design schools of the world, working on costumes, lighting, on props to create innovation in set design. You can actually have the faculties from these schools working together. You can have the students from these schools working together, learning from one another, and bringing the best of design to create the most glorious production that would be possible. We consider this to be a new school advantage. Today, in the 21st century, I think part of what it takes to be successful is to have your heart, eyes, and ears open. You have to make your way through a complex world. You have to take charge of your own career. You're not going to survive in a practice room. You survive in the real world, and that's what we're committed to at the New School.
Hopefully some of that spoke to you a little bit, because that is what we are all about, is preparing you for your next steps, for giving you opportunities to collaborate, work across disciplines. It's something that we're very, very excited about here at the New School. So the New School is a university. We are part of a larger whole. I think one of the real advantages is that we are part of this larger group, but being here in the College of Performing Arts can feel really intimate and can feel like a really small school at the same time, with all of the advantages of having a big university behind you. We are going to focus about talking about the College of Performing Arts today, but I do want to give you just a quick overview of the university, of the new school, what we are about, who we are, and what we do. First of all, my name's Amanda Hosking. I'm the Director of Admission for the College of Performing Arts. And I'm so excited to welcome you here today. How many of you are admitted into our School of Drama? Can you raise your hand? Excellent. And how many of you are admitted into our School of Jazz and Contemporary Music? Gorgeous. And how many of you are admitted into Manus? Excellent. A nice mix of students. So one of the things you'll note is that the new school has over 10,000 students from over 116 different countries, all 50 states, and across 5 colleges. Sorry. I want to talk a little bit about the history of the new school as a whole, and then I'm going to let Richard talk a little bit about the history of the College of Performing Arts. So the new school was founded in 1919. So for those of you starting class with us in the fall, you will be part of our centennial class, which I think is really exciting. We have an amazing year of celebrations happening, all kinds of things going on here on the campus because it is our 100th year. Does anyone know how the new school got its name? Why are we called the new school if it's 100 years old? Do you have any guesses? Yeah? Do you have a guess? What is, no guesses? Okay, why is it called the new school?
Just to say that it's a new way of seeing things.
Yeah, it's a new way of seeing things. It's a philosophy, absolutely. Right on the nose. I'll give you your $5 later. Thank you. We were founded nearly a century ago by academic visionaries from top universities who were frustrated by the timidity and the backwards thinking of academia at the time. And so they founded a new school. They envisioned an institution where people could openly address the problems facing society. And that's still what we focus on today. It's something that we're very, very excited about. I want to turn the presentation over to our Executive Dean of the College of Performing Arts, Richard Kessler. Do you want the podium?
Yeah.
Okay.
How much time do I have?
Maybe 5 to 10 minutes?
Okay, good.
Okay.
I was just checking on how much time I had. Thank you, everyone. I'm Richard Kessler. I'm the Executive Dean for the College of Performing Arts and also the Dean of the Manus School of Music. So let me tell you the real, because I like history. I'm not saying that Amanda doesn't like history. Let me tell you the real sort of centrality of why the new school was created. There were a group of faculty members in 1919 who were significant parts of Columbia University. And a particular issue emerged at Columbia, and it was that the faculty were all asked to sign a loyalty oath around the time of, it was coming out of the First World War, which ended in 1918. But in that period of time, so 1918 headed to 1919, the faculty were asked to sign a loyalty oath, and they were also, the loyalty oath essentially stated that they were not allowed to speak critically of the war or anything related to the First World War. And there were 2 faculty members, important faculty members. One was, I think, the leading economist at Columbia University at the time, and the other one, I can't remember what he or she did. But what happened was, it's interesting because these 2 faculty members actually were not opposed to the war. But there were other faculty members at Columbia University who had spoken out against the war and were fired. And these 2 faculty members who were in support of the war protested this, not because they were against the war, but they were against the idea that colleagues who had spoken out against the war were fired. And this actually was a precipitating factor that led to the creation of the new school. Initially, it was created as an adult education unit in a time when very few people went to college. The idea that anyone could take college-level courses. And I won't spend all, I would love to actually tell you more about the history of the new school, but I don't know that that's going to accomplish what we'd like to do in terms of the College of Performing Arts. But this is always, I think, sort of at the center, that it was an unusual place. They didn't want initially to create credit-bearing courses. They wanted to create an open environment where people who felt that they were shut out from higher education. These, to a large degree, were women, people of color. At that point in time, going to college was primarily for white men. So it was just opened up to people who couldn't afford it, opened up to people who felt that they weren't really allowed into higher ed. And it's interesting, too, the very earliest history of the performing arts at the new school is a glorious history, and it probably is, in America, if not the world, the most significant history connected to experimental artists. What you have across this time, you have people like Martha Graham, you have people like Aaron Copland, you have Frank Lloyd Wright, Tennessee Williams. You have Erwin Piscator is brought over to create the dramatic workshop, Piscator being a leading proponent of experimental theater. And out of the dramatic workshop come some of the greatest artists of the 20th century in theater. This is, again, where you have Tennessee Williams. This is where you have not only Marlon Brando, but you also have Rod Steiger, for those of you who are fans of the movie On the Waterfront. You have Tony Curtis, you have B. Arthur. James Baldwin connected to the program. I could go on and on. You have John Cage teaching for 10 years. You have the first jazz, among the very first jazz courses ever taught in higher ed anywhere in the world. You have some of the first television programs in the 1960s, early 1960s, of jazz performances coming out of this university. In fact, those concerts took place at 12th Street. It's a remarkable history of some of the most maverick, iconoclastic artists. And then the interesting piece is you also then, of course, have Mannes, which was a separate school at one point from 1916 to 1989. And today, the School of Drama, the School of Jazz and Contemporary, and the Mannes School of Music are essentially all connected under the umbrella of the College of Performing Arts. Each school has a slightly different viewpoint on its particular field because the schools were separate for many, many years. However, we believe that a hallmark of what we're about is the ways in which you can move across these three schools. The ways in which we see Mannes students performing with jazz students, performing with drama students, or all three students from all three schools working together. More and more what we're doing is we're breaking down these boundaries and making opportunities happen, the likes of which you would be hard-pressed options and opportunities that you would be hard-pressed to find at any other similar school, whether it be a freestanding conservatory or it be a performing arts college within a larger university. And this is something we're particularly interested in. If you're a Mannes student, what I would say is this is the place that Richard Good came from. This is the place where Murray Pariah came from. This is where Frederico von Stade walked these aisles as students. Simeon Bishkoff, I could go on and on. This is the place in the jazz world where you look at Brad Mehldau, among the greatest pianists in the history of jazz, where you take a look at Jose James, who has a beautiful new Blue Note recording of the music of Bill Withers, Robert Glasper, who's redefining the connection between popular forms and jazz in a way that very few artists have done. Bilal, Peter Bernstein, I could go Jasmine Horn, Thelonious Monk, award winner in vocal jazz. And you can go through any one of these schools and you see, I believe, a faculty that is unparalleled. If you look over the faculty lists for these three schools, you will be hard-pressed to find really, truly any other school with a faculty like this. A couple of other things. We are committed, we have to be committed to quality. At the same time, I feel very strongly about the idea, the notion, the philosophy, that we are here to give you the finest education that you can possibly have in the art form, in theater, whether it be acting, whether it be directing, whether it be playwriting, in jazz and contemporary music, whether you're an instrumentalist, whether you're a vocalist, whether you compose, whether you do all three things, or four things, or five things that we don't even have to name. Whether you're a student at Mannes, an opera singer, a pianist, a composer, an instrumentalist. Essentially, we recognize that you are here, in fact, about that craft. However, we are also committed to providing you the finest sound and basic education overall. So when you tie that together, what we aspire to, what we work towards every single day, is to ensure that you will be prepared for a life in theater, in music, as well as a life outside of theater and outside of music. The fact of the matter is, these are tough fields. So we want to be sure, no matter what your career path is, that you will be prepared. And really, the time has passed to say one is exclusive of the other. The better your communication skills are, the better you are at speaking, the better you are at writing, the better you are at collaborating, the better you are at raising money, the better you are at producing concerts, the better you are at understanding technology, the better you are at engaging audiences. And I could go on with that list. All of those things which were once seen to some degree as being separate from the artistic practice, I believe, and we believe, are linked, intrinsically linked to what it means to be successful as an artist. So let me take a couple more minutes to explain, maybe in a more simple way, what I mean by that. It used to be, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, you might win a big competition. So let's say you win the Thelonious Monk Jazz Competition. Let's say you win the Van Cliburn Competition. These are big competitions. It used to be you went right from that to a career, that it was guaranteed. We had a student at Manus a few years ago. I'm happy to say he won the Van Cliburn competition, Yekwon Sun Woo. He did not immediately go and get management in the States. He had European management before the competition, but he did not go immediately. It wasn't like it was in 1959 or 58 or whatever the year was when Van Cliburn won the Tchaikovsky competition, the first American to win that competition. And he essentially, I believe, got a ticker tape parade down Broadway in New York City, and he immediately was booked to play everywhere. It just doesn't really work that way anymore. So what you know is the world has changed, and we are committed to it. And I'll tell you something maybe a bit personal, but then make it even more important. This is a personal matter for me. I have to feel, when I try to sleep at least, when any number of things might be keeping me up at night, I have to believe in my heart that we are doing the best by you. We are doing everything that we can, again, to ensure that you have the best possible education in the arts, and that you have the best possible sound and basic education to ensure that those two things will be there, and that you will be as well prepared for the real world when you graduate as you possibly can. So that's probably, I should probably stop talking right now so you can hear from someone else. I look forward to having the opportunity to speak with you a little bit later, to meet some of you a little bit later. And I want to say one very last thing. I'm notorious for saying I'll say one last thing and then I say 50 last things. But I have a 14-year-old daughter. She's almost 14. She'll be 14 on June 10th. So I'm always very touched by this, by the orientation, by Admitted Students Day, because it does feel to me that it's an incredibly tender moment. I know that the students have incredible excitement about this next step. And I would imagine many of the students sort of wonder what it'll be like. And for a parent, the idea that you are going to send your son or your daughter, your child, out into the world. And I think about what I'll be in your seats in a few years. And it's an incredibly tender moment. And I want you to know that, we're not perfect, but we do everything we possibly can to support the students as if those students were our own children. And I think about that deeply. I believe it's not only an honor, but I believe that ultimately it is my obligation and our obligation at the university. So I look forward to perhaps speaking with you a bit more, and I hope the rest of the day will be just great. Thank you very much.
So, Richard, as always, has gone off his script a little bit, but I do want to highlight a couple of these things that he has also mentioned, in that we are really committed to embracing new technologies. We are really committed to the collaboration across disciplines that he has talked about. Manus as a school has incredible teachers, incredible faculty, incredible performance spaces and opportunities. And partners visiting artists. Is there anyone that you would want to highlight in particular from this year, Richard?
Faculty?
Faculty, visiting artists, events?
Sure, thank you. You know, an important facet of what we do at the school is improvisation. And this is partly what they call improvisation. So a couple of things, and I'll give a chance for both Pippin and Keller to speak specifically about the jazz and contemporary faculty and also the drama faculties. But I'll take a Manus perspective for a second. So we just appointed a new string quartet in residence, the Jack Quartet. They are the preeminent contemporary-oriented string quartet in the world. Last year, we hired the great violin virtuoso Jennifer Coe, who not only plays Bach as well as anyone has ever played Bach, and I would suggest you get her recording so you'd be blown away by it. But the projects that she does, the work that she does, the collaboration. Those two examples, they're only in string. It's a little bit. We just hired Rebecca Heller, bassoon, for the bassoon faculty. She is part of a group called the International Contemporary Ensemble, which is probably among the most important mid-sized ensembles in the world right now, redefining what it is to run an ensemble. And while you might say for a second it's a music ensemble, but in fact they are doing multimedia, they are doing theater, they are doing dance, they are running summer programs, they are reinventing almost everything that you could possibly imagine. And I guess the very last, I could go on and on forever, but we have a really, truly extraordinary faculty. We just hired the co-principal cellist, Rafi Figueroa of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. We just hired another cellist, Yehuda Hanani, one of the great, more traditionally oriented cellists, who also runs the great Barrington Festival. So what I would say is every single person that we hire, almost to a T at this point in time, we look not only to ensure that they are a great teacher, that they are a great artist, but that ultimately do they have a practice that's relevant. So when you look at Yehuda Hanani, that he's been running this great Barrington Festival for so many years. Or when you look at when you look at Missy Mazzoli in the composition department, that she recently created something called the Luna Lab, which is essentially a composition program for young teenage women. And women have, to some degree, have had a rough time with composition in the classical worlds for many, many years. So you see, you have an entrepreneur, and you have among the finest mid-career composers anywhere in the world. So that's just a couple of examples. You're welcome.
Excellent. I'd like to introduce Pippin Parker, our Dean of Drama, to talk a little bit more about that school.
Yeah, thanks. So much of what Richard was saying about the college as a whole is a reflection of work that we're doing. As he mentioned, we're inflected a little bit differently. To give you a sense, and let me just talk about the undergraduate program for a minute. The BFA program at the School of Drama was started in 2013. So it has it's the recipient of a great fortune, which is to have started recently. It's a young program, and it was intentionally designed in a couple of ways. One is that we were very committed to, as part of the sort of most relevant and effective education, to training students across disciplines, multidisciplinary. So we are very extremely committed to students understanding the component parts of what it takes to make collaborative theater, in addition to the way in which they identify their role with theater specifically. So all of the undergraduates in all the members of the BFA take foundational acting and directing and playwriting and creative technology and something we call aesthetic inquiry, which is really about, which is a philosophy around engaging with art, all art, not only performing arts, global dramatic literature, and a bunch of other courses. By around semester 3 or so, our students have had a much deeper understanding of what it takes to make theater, of the roles and influences and positions and work that goes in. And one aspect that we were extremely dedicated to from the beginning was having a way for students to identify other deep interests in collaborative making. What we had found was that students often have the opportunity to act in high school and to be actors, occasionally may have something close to the opportunity to direct or to write, but very infrequently, although there are some very good writing programs in this city for high school students and probably in other cities. And one of the most gratifying aspects of this program is that students do actually, who've come in identified as actors, find other aspects of theater, performance, eventually filmmaking, and a whole bunch of other things that they feel express themselves maybe more naturally or with equal importance, and they can sort of gravitate off. So our students graduate. Sometimes they come in as actors and leave as writers, but quite often what we see is this sort of what we call the hyphenates, who are young people, young artists, emerging artists, who proudly and without any hesitancy refer to themselves as actor-directors or director-creative technologists or writer-actors or any of the sort of variations therein. It's a stark sort of moment because as recently as about 15 years ago, particularly coming out of the conservatory training, which has been the predominant training system in the United States for some time, for decades, it was really seen as a sort of stigma. If you didn't say, I am an actor, full stop, end. If you added anything in or to that, it was seen as a sort of backup, a kind of weakness or a fault or a flaw, and was an indication of your lack of commitment and that you weren't ready to die for that experience. And I think what Richard was saying was, it was not only is that, I think, inhuman in a kind of way, but as the professional landscape has changed, and it has changed radically, it is, I would say it is more of a deficit to put all of your eggs in one relatively small basket and not have a sense of the other aspects of the work that you do. The second part that we were very, very interested in is making sure that all students feel that they have agency. For a very long time, musicians, dancers, actors in particular, were considered really interpretive artists at best, and were kind of infantilized by a system which was only interested in them for their talent as measured in a very particular sort of way. So we really want and need students because we think the future is dependent on, first of all, it's going to favor people who make work very strongly, which we can talk about later in our little breakout session, or you can ask us about. But we are really involved in the business of, or the art of making, collaborative making in particular. So we see our students as artists. We see them as all of them capable of making, of engaging in critical thinking, of bringing their whole selves to the environment. And we often say when we admit students, we're not admitting a sort of set of talents that are somehow captured in some flesh with a name. We are admitting human beings who have different experiences, who have different backgrounds, who have different desires, and who are, quite frankly, looking for ways to get from their artistic, personal aspirations to being able to execute them at a high degree in the professional world, hopefully, get out and pay their rent and work with other artists. And so our job is we feel is taking those humans who are our community and kind of building a sort of bridge together. It's a wide bridge. It's a sort of a web of bridges connected to the students' peers, the students' faculty, the professional world out here, which is just all around us. We are plopped in the middle. That's, as Richard alluded to, that we take that responsibility of helping to nurture and develop those young people very, very, very seriously. I think one thing that may be notable as you kind of hang out here and engage with people, talk to people, is there is nothing cynical about this place at all. And when we feel that from people who come into our community or who are in our community, which is very rare, we shut it down immediately because the world does not need any more cynicism. The world needs young people with great belief in the potential of what they're going to do and the potential for the world to change because of that, to be in transition. And I think that our work, and I hope that our work reflects that. Certainly our students do. It's nothing is more exciting than being with our young students, our undergraduates and our graduates who come to us with nothing but hope and talent and desire and aspirations and a deep belief that the world needs to change. It needs to be different. It needs to get better, and that artistic practice, creative collaboration is one way, and it is a way that they have seen within themselves that they can contribute to that. And I guess the last thing I will say is, you know, we talk about all the time in terms of our program of asking ourselves how the program and how the work that we do is relevant, as Richard mentioned. Rigorous, of course, because these are not easy. The training is hard. The courses are hard. The expectations are high. The commitment is serious. We ask ourselves how we are engaged, how we engage with each other, and how we are engaged with a community that's outside these walls, because we don't want to just be doing this in the insular, protective world where we can pat ourselves in the back and claim to be, you know, progressive, humane, empathetic humans, but what is the relationship with any community out there? What's the cause and effect relationship between the work we do and the lives of people who are, you know, around us, and how connected we are to the profession? Because ultimately, yes, the profession is important. We want students to work professionally. There's that's a whole range of things, but yes, they should be. We want them to get to a place where they are compensated for their work, where they are recognized as artists, where they're professionals. So those are our sort of watchwords. Later on, the way that we work at drama, I think the students are going to do some work and make some stuff, which is basically what we do. And then also parents will have a chance to ask the types of questions which would probably embarrass their kids, but we can do that separately, and we'll get to that. So thanks so much. I appreciate you guys coming out on this beautiful, really glorious, one of the first really nice weekends here we've had, and we're so, as Richard said, we feel privileged to have your interest, and it's great to meet you. I look forward to meeting more of you personally later on.
Excellent. I'd like to introduce Keller Coker, who is the Dean of the School of Jazz and Contemporary Music, to speak a little bit about those programs.
All right. I think I'll stand up.
Innovation.
Yes. Once again, we're thrilled to see you all here. Excited about the future and you making the choice to come and join this community and do work here. We recognize in all three schools, but certainly it's so clear for musicians who come to the School of Jazz and Contemporary Music that you want to be a part of the community of music makers that is affecting your generation. That you are going to be the people who create the next musical language. What will shape the musical language of really the entire world. The musical cultures and what's happened in the last 100 years in the United States, you cannot go anywhere in the world and not hear American music from the last 100 years. You have then the responsibility and the privilege of continuing that and continuing to be the creative voice in that. We recognize too that when you begin college, right around that age of 17 or 18, that's the beginning of your career. And we think that you've made a very wise choice, not only in coming here, but in coming to New York. Because there are really only a few cities that you can truly begin your career in, and New York is the best of those cities. Here you will join a community, a large community of musicians, and hone your skills in both live performance, because this is the greatest live performance city in the world, and also in embracing new technologies and creating work that is permanent, recorded, videoed. We are so fortunate also to have the advantage of being here in New York, so that we do have the most incredible faculty that you can imagine. When we walk into the faculty meetings for the School of Jazz and Contemporary Music, and you look around, you see an all-star group of people. You can look around the room, and more than half of them will be ranked 1, 2, or 3 in the downbeat polls for this year. There are Grammy winners. There are students that are Grammy winners. So you truly are beginning your career, and in a way that both Pippin and Richard have spoken, in an environment that prides itself on being relevant. Because we're living in the now, and now is your time. And so we'll have much more, of course, to say about that later. Should I talk about faculty now?
If you'd like to. Yeah.
Well, I can say a couple of faculty members, sure. Really, in looking around the room, it's everyone from someone like Hank Shockley, founding member of Public Enemy, right? You know, at the beginning, I mean, hip hop culture was born in New York. And then sitting next to Hank will be Jane Ira Bloom, one of the great saxophonists, won a Grammy last year. She's full-time faculty here. And then sitting right behind Jane will be Jimmy Owens, NEA Jazz Master. And maybe next to Jimmy, Joanne Brackeen, the first woman NEA Jazz Master, woman instrumentalist. We're the only school that has 2 NEA Jazz Masters, by the way. It's difficult to go out and hear jazz and soul and pop music in the city of New York and not see either a current student, a faculty member, or an alum on stage making music. The school's been here now for 32 years, and the tendrils have gone out into the city, and we are everywhere. And because of that, you are now networking with certainly the best network on the East Coast. There are other good schools all around the country, but when students finish at those schools, they move here. And so, again, we are very excited to have you come and join this community.
Thank you. I know that you gentlemen have spoken a little bit about some of the courses. I don't know if there's any other classes or collaborations that you'd want to highlight at this point in time?
Well, it's one thing I will say about the College of Performing Arts, and any of the current students will tell you we are constantly evolving new courses and new opportunities for students, particularly in the collaborative realm. So there are existing courses like Jane Ira Bloom and Joe Grafazzi's Artists Improv Lab. Is that the name? I always get wrong.
It's good, close enough.
Close, right. Which is students from all 3 schools sort of learning to speak a new making a new improvisatory language. But that's a couple of years old now, and there are always new courses coming on. I think one thing it's important to say, if it hasn't been referenced, is there are also many of our students do take one of the university minors, which may or may not be related in any kind of way to the work that they're doing. It's part of being a part of a 10,000 student 5-college university. There are students who take who are minoring in economics, in photography, and all sorts of things. Design, and that is something that we are happy that our programs support, that they have the room within them, even being a hard, pretty rigorous arts program, but there is room, and we like and want students to have those other experiences, which only enriches their own understanding of the work that they do and their community, so it's great.
Thank you.
I mean, we are absolutely revolutionizing the way that that music schools look at music history. In the past, music history was the most dreaded and loathed sequence that any undergraduate music major could take. Now, in our music history classes, students are making things. They are engaging with the artists who create this music. A course we've been running this last year called Take Me to the River is based on a documentary of musical cultures along the Mississippi River, Memphis and New Orleans, and the filmmaker who made the documentary around that is the teacher for the class. He also brings in the artists themselves from New Orleans and Memphis. Fraser Boy, Academy Award-winning rapper, was here on Wednesday working with the class. There's a song, Music and Revolution, taught by Richard Barone. It's about songwriting and revolution in Greenwich Village in the 1960s. So this is where we are, right? This is our neighborhood. We're talking about our neighborhood. Richard Barone also happens to be the president of the Northeast Grammy chapter. So he's an incredibly influential human being in the community. In both of those classes, final projects include students making new works and presenting them that are based on things that inspired them during the course of that class. And so this is an entirely new way of engaging with musical cultures, musicology, and again, your artistic voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. Keller's exactly right. I went to Manus for 2 years, and I went to another school where I got 2 other degrees. I actually have a copy of my music history book from when I was a student, and and actually you could look at it, and I wrote actually in the book itself how much I hated that course. Actually, it's really true. It's on my bookshelf. I've never showed it to anyone. I wrote a few things I won't tell you about, but that's another story. We are across music reinventing music history. It was, in fact, for many years, the driest sort of thing that was about fact. What city in Italy was opera created in? Well, first of all, define opera. We have thought a lot about the issue of what will the course do for you? What do people historically feel about the music history course? Is it something that you really feel that you're able to, as a student, bring into your practice, that it helps you think about who you are, the world that you're connected to, the world that you've come from, the world that you're going to? Is it something that certainly enriches your abilities in terms of knowledge and to some degree skill, but can you really put it to use? So we've done a tremendous amount in music history. I think it's, in the next few years, going to be interesting as to how the other schools will view what we're doing. It's actually the corollary is really in art history. A lot of work has been done over the last 20 years in the teaching of art history. It is really rarely taught as a march through time and memorizing facts. It's much more active, it's much more engaged. You have art historians taking photographs connected to periods of time or works that they're looking at. But I did want to tell you about one other thing. It is a container for what will be a series of courses. We created this year the Philip Glass Institute at the College of Performing Arts, and also the Philip Glass Ensemble is a new ensemble in residence. Now, Philip Glass is in some ways the perfect container for this discussion here today because his work is about music composition, his work is about performance, his work is connected to theater. In fact, there's a show on Broadway right now that's getting quite a lot of attention. He did the music. It's about the operas he's written. It's about the music theater pieces. It's about the film scores he's done. He's connected to artists of almost every ilk, whether it be dancers, whether it be photographers, whether it be filmmakers, whether it be directors. So what happens is we will, over the next few years, be creating more and more courses. The center itself will probably have about a dozen different courses in the next 3 to 5 years that we'll be rotating through. Those courses will present opportunities for students individually in each one of the schools, but more importantly, collectively in each one of the schools. So right now we have the first course opened up through the Philip Glass Institute that in fact is designed where it's bringing in many of Philip's collaborators, whether it be his music publisher, whether it be the person who runs his record label, because that's Philip Glass. He runs his entire life and career. Whether it be his collaborators, Lucinda Childs, the great choreographer, came in just last week, and she's, of course, the choreographer of his landmark opera and sort of groundbreaking opera, Einstein at the Beach. So there's filmmakers who are coming into this class, and the class is open to all COPA students as well as students across the university. We're going to be seeing multiples of this next year. We have another project that's be taking place in the fall connected to Centennial Week that comes out of this course or the Philip Glass Institute. We will be screening Errol Morris's documentary film, The Fog of War, where Robert McNamara, the architect of the Vietnam War, looks backwards on all the mistakes that he made. Philip Glass wrote an incredible score to the piece. That score will be performed live at the screening of that film with students from both the School of Jazz and Contemporary Music and Mannes in the orchestra. And we expect that both Philip Glass and Errol Morris will be available after the film for a talkback with the audience. So that's a kind of, it's a container for courses. It's an ensemble that's in residence, and it's a multitude of opportunities that will be made available to students of this College of Performing Arts and only at this College of Performing Arts.
Excellent, thank you. I want to move really quickly just to highlight a couple of things that we can talk and dig into a little bit deeper in the breakouts. We do offer bachelor's, master's pathways for students here at the school. There's a Master of Arts in Arts Management and Entrepreneurship that I know that we want to get into a little bit further that's specifically designed for practicing artists. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in our breakouts. We also offer a BA, BFA pathway for the School of Jazz and Contemporary Music where students can do a dual degree with Eugene Lang College of Liberal Arts, and as well as get their BFA at the School of Jazz and Contemporary Music, and that's a 5-year program. As mentioned, students are able to minor across the schools, regardless of major. So if you have multiple passions, we are really interested in you developing multiple passions. We think the most interesting artists do more than one thing. All right, so we want to support you in doing that. We want to help you. We want to make sure you have everything you need to achieve all of your passions and all of your goals. We have incredible facilities here at the school. How many of you have gotten to take a tour already? Okay, for those of you who have not taken a tour, there will be additional tours available at the end of the program today, but we have beautiful performance spaces, beautiful facilities, and we definitely want to have the opportunity to show them off to you today. But here are some of our bigger performance spaces. This is our Tishman Theater. This is our, gosh, what is the name of this one now?
12th Street Auditorium.
Street Auditorium, thank you. Yes, so this auditorium is on 12th Street, it's a block away, and then the Tishman is at the University Center, the new building on the corner of 13th and 5th Avenue. We do want students to engage in campus life. We have a number of activities, clubs. We even have a mascot. His name is Gnarls the Narwhal. And we have incredible public programs. Now, Richard, I don't know if you want to talk at all about some of the major performances or the Stone?
Sure. We have tremendous number of things going on in terms of public performances. We don't actually... We haven't yet organized it in a way that the rest of the outside world understands that we have a public performance arm. And what I mean by that is there are many universities that have performance arms. So the University of Michigan, for example, has, I think, the oldest performing arts series in America. It's the University Musical Society. Or Columbia University has Miller Theater, so what happens is they're presenting professional programs regularly. Then they call it Miller Theater, or they call it the University Musical Society. We have a tremendous amount that we do. We haven't bundled it together for better or for worse. It starts really with the Stone. The Stone is a famous experimental and avant-garde music venue created by John Zorn about 20 years ago. It's the second or third venue like that John has created. We brought the Stone. The Stone was listed, I think, in Jazz Times as being among the top 3 jazz clubs in America. And the Stone is right below us, actually. The Stone is in the Glassbox Theater 5 nights a week, 49 weeks a year. We give 240 concerts a year at the Stone, Tuesday through Saturday, starting at 8:30. And these are many of the most important artists in the world are performing. You could pick up the Times almost any week and you will see a feature of the artist who's curating that week at the Stone. This past week, I'm glad to say it was Jonathan Finlayson, who's an alum of the School for Jazz and Contemporary Music, trumpet player, and he curated that week selected by John Zorn. A couple of weeks before that, we have Jeffrey Ziegler, who's on the cello faculty at Mannes, who curated a week. I went to a week last summer. It was Bill Frisell, one of the greatest guitarists in the world, curated the entire week. It was a week of only duos with drummers, including one of the drummers from our school, Andrew Cyril. And it could be Ryuichi Sakamoto, it could be Laurie Anderson, it could be any number of pianists. And it is in our venue, and seats are free. For any unsold seat is available free to a student, any performance, first come, first serve. We also have the New School Concerts, a series that's been going since the mid-50s that has many of the most important chamber ensembles in the world performing all year long, a little bit of a more traditional-oriented program, but if to hear the young string quartets, piano trios, the young opera singers, the venues, I think we give something like 25 concerts a year like that. And we are regularly presenting things, whether they be partnerships with the Grammy Museum, whether it's David Byrne coming here, essentially as part of a tour for a new book, giving performances. It really is sort of an incredible place. I think, to be honest, the challenge is there's just so much going on. Getting the word out to every student is just difficult. So we have, in some ways, an overabundance of really wonderful things.
Thank you. So we do always like to highlight notable graduates of the school, and many have been mentioned here by the deans today, but we do like to highlight some more recent notable new schoolers. So the first one we'd like to talk about is Jordan Cooper. Pippin, what would you like to say about him?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so incredible. This is just this. I have a hard time talking about it because it's so mind blowing. So Jordan graduated with his BFA last May, so less than a year ago. Jordan came in essentially as an actor. He's from Baltimore. I think he went to Baltimore School of the Arts. I'm not positive about that, which is you may know, excellent arts school in Baltimore. Came in as an actor, started writing, playwriting his first year. He had an interest in playwriting and is just an upstanding guy. Gave it his all. But his picture's up there not because of that, but because he is currently at the Public Theater, one of the most legendary theaters in New York, Joe Papp's Public Theater, right down the street, where he wrote a play that he started while he started writing it while he's here. It went through workshops. It is in the main stage at the Public Theater. It was just extended at the Public Theater. He is starring in it, and it is directed by an MFA alum from the School of Drama. So Jordan is, it's a little too much to hope for. I'm almost reticent to tell you because it's so crazy that this happened so quickly. As someone said, he's the youngest playwright ever to be produced at the Public, which is hard to believe because it's a 60-year-old institution that's had wunderkids of all stripes, but an amazing guy, and actually his show is on. It's called Ain't No Mo. It's about an African American family, and he's an extraordinary young person.
It's getting incredible
Really
reviews.
extraordinary. Yes. Yeah.
If you haven't heard of the Public Theater, it's the place where this sort of fringe musical called Hamilton came from.
Yeah, that little thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chorus line.
Yeah.
I don't know. Things like that. You guys familiar?
Yes.
Okay. What about Nadine Sierra? Richard, is there anything you'd like to say about her?
Also, I believe it would be reasonable to say that early to mid career opera singers, that Nadine is probably at the very top of the class. It's also hard to believe she probably isn't much more than 35 years old. And may not even be 35 years old, but essentially she's performing lead roles at the Metropolitan Opera and all over the world. She was a Met National Council winner coming out of her undergrad year. A lot of students hope to win this coming out of professional studies programs or their masters. She won it very young, right out of her undergrad. She was an Annenberg Award winner. She's a Richard Tucker Award winner. She has also an eye and a mind for fashion and design, so it's not unusual to see Nadine featured in fashion and design magazines
and she just did two nights last year at the Armory, which is another great performing arts venue in the city. She had two nights of solo recitals, accompanied by also Manus alum Brian Wagorn, whom they know each other from their school days. And we are super proud of Nadine. And Nadine came here this year for a master class, and she told everyone in the master class how much she loved Manus and still loves Manus, and how of all the schools that she could have gone to, she chose Manus over all the others. So I don't, it's hard to, it's really something to see the career that this very fine young person is having. There are very few careers like it today, actually.
And then Keller, do you want to say anything about James?
Oh, sure. So James Francis just graduated 2 years ago, or yeah, just it'll be 2 years come May. He's a piano player, composer, band leader who, before he graduated, had already won his first Grammy, co-writing with Chance the Rapper. He just finished a tour with Pat Metheny, trio, in trio form that will then continue in May. He's everywhere. I mean, he's an absolutely incredible musician. And yes, he had a record deal with Blue Note before he graduated, and made the deal with them that they would not release that first record until after he graduated, because he wanted to finish school. And so with his career, really, even by the end of his sophomore year, he was touring regularly. We find ways to work with our students so that the last thing we want to do is to stop you from getting your career going. We recognize that when you're on the road working with artists like James was working with, that's an education as well. And so we have mechanisms to make it possible for students to head out into the world and practice their craft and their art. So we're very, very proud of James. He comes back regularly. Great student, great human being.
He also plays regularly with the Roots, and I'd say half the time he was here in school, he was playing with the band, the Jimmy Kimmel Live Band as well. So yeah, crazy career.
Yeah. What about Becca Brunstetter?
Becca is an alum from our MFA. She's such an interesting story. I was also her writing teacher. Becca grew up in North Carolina and had really didn't come from a background of going to theater or really any performing arts. She went to, and I cannot remember where she went undergrad now, but she came to us on our grad program, and her parents she told her parents that she was coming to New York to study playwriting, but the only plays that they didn't know anything about theater except musicals. So, she's a wonderful family, military family, just not like the arts were not a part of that life. So she came and she started writing an incredibly exciting, young, and amazingly prolific, deeply sensitive, really funny, and just unusually talented young woman. And she too, within about a year of, she won a lot of awards while she was in her MFA. I think she may have won a couple before then, and started meeting the faculty, started working with the faculty, did festivals, and within about a year, I think, after she had graduated, she had started having plays produced all over the United States, was commissioned by Roundabout and a bunch of places, and ended up working in television as well, which she does to this day. And so she's executive producer. I think she's executive producer for on This Is Us, which she writes, and she's continuing to write, and had a play at Manhattan Theater Club this season. Amazing person. And also if you know the Kilroy list, which is a list of sort of young female playwrights, and it's been very important. There's a couple of female women writer sort of groups. She has been very involved with that since the beginning. She's been one of a very enthusiastic, powerful voice for women playwrights. So, and she's very, she's in touch with us all the time. I was just texting with her. She's a big fan of the school, and we're so happy to have her still in our community. Wonderful person.
Absolutely. Yekwan Sunwoo, Richard?
He's the one I mentioned earlier, but there's not much to say. He won the Van Cliburn competition, I think, 2 years ago. And now he has a wonderful American management, domestic management, as well as an international management. But one of the great, one of the top, it is among the top 5 piano competitions in the world. Tremendous player.
And last but not least, Robert Glasper?
Yeah. So, I mean, we really do have an embarrassment of riches here with alums and current students. So Robert Glasper, also pianist, composer, arranger, keyboard player, Grammy winner for Black Music Radio back in 2008. He every year in the downbeat polls, just this year in downbeat polls, he was represented in the top 5 in 8 different categories. So really one of the most powerful voices in jazz and contemporary music right now, also a Blue Note recording artist. We're so proud that he went to school here, and he does continue to brag about it. That this was the place. This was the place where he really got to practice his art and develop himself as an artist, and then immediately headed out into the world.
Awesome.
I'm going to just jump in for a second on the improvisatory theme. For every one of these artists, alums, there are just countless numbers who we may not have featured, and they also may not be the biggest names. There may not be Robert Glasper. For every Robert Glasper, there's Matthew Stewart, who's working as a director at the 3rd Street Music School settlement. And he's working on his practice. He's a trombonist and a multimedia artist, while he's also teaching, involved in running the 3rd Street Music School settlement, an important community music school. Or there's an oboe player I can think of who's working at the Kaufman Music Center, who's developing his craft as an oboist, as a conductor, working during the day, doing important things, these things that they all relate. It's all part of what he was hoping to do with his career, how he's building it. There's countless numbers. What I'd love to do next year, you won't be here for next year, is I would love to counterbalance some of these big star names with people who might not be stars necessarily, but they are doing incredible things. They are doing incredible things while they are building their lives, building their careers, while they are satisfied, while they are putting food on the table, while they're happy. And that this is also part of it. We're not just about Robert Glasper. We love Robert Glasper, don't get me wrong. But we are about every single student being able to go out there in this world, whether they become a Nadine Sierra or not. Is important to us, but it is not everything to us. We are not only about the stars. We are about every single student being a star in multitude of ways.
Thank you. Thank you very much. How are you guys doing? Are you still with me? I know it's hot. I know. So I want to talk a little bit about next steps for you. You're here. It's Admitted Student Day. We want you to come to this school. That's what this day is about, right? So I just want to talk a little bit about the next steps. We want you to become a new schooler. We want you to become a New Yorker. The next step for most students, if you haven't already, is to deposit to the school. Apply for housing. Our housing priority deadline this year is May 7th. It's coming right up.
Holy moly.
Okay? Registration and orientation will happen in August, and should you have any questions or need any help, you can reach out to performingarts@newschool.edu or admissions@newschool.edu.